You're listening to the Soul Career Podcast, the podcast that brings you stories from people who've taken a risk to discover careers that fill them with purpose and make them come alive. I'm your host, Lysandra Rickards, and I lead Soul Career, a coaching company that helps executives, professionals, and entrepreneurs to find and live their life's work and to lead authentically. So if you love this episode, let us know. Send us a message on Instagram at Soul Career. Now for the episode. Thanks for joining us at Soul Career. I'm Lysandra Rickards, and I'm recording this on March 15th, 2020 at the height of the coronavirus pandemic. Now, I have not been immune to the anxiety surrounding this virus and the pandemic. The other day, I drank this immunity defense concoction with cayenne pepper and some other stuff in there. And I got really bad heartburn. And I thought, oh my God, I contracted this virus. Oh my God, what do I do? So I called my friend who's a doctor at night at around 12:30, midnight at night, right? And I'm like, oh my gosh, should I call the hotline? Should I go to the hospital? What should I do? My chest is burning. It feels so tight. I have this burning pain in my chest. And she was like, Lysandra, do you have a fever? No. Do you have shortness of breath or any respiratory distress? No. Do you have any of the symptoms of this virus? And I said, well, my chest is burning. And she said, well, that sounds like heartburn. What have you eaten or drank? And I remember that I had this tea with cayenne pepper in it. So the moral of the story is don't put cayenne pepper in your tea right now and give yourself heartburn and think that you have the virus, number one. And number two, we have to self-manage through this period of panic and anxiety. We have to pull on all the tools we have to manage ourselves through this crisis. But what I wanted to talk about on this episode is how will the coronavirus pandemic affect your career, right? And I have a lot of thoughts for different segments of the working world. So whether you are an entrepreneur, a freelancer, a professional in the corporate world, or an executive, this pandemic will affect you. And I actually think there will be a lot of positive effects coming out of this on the working world as well. So I want to use this opportunity to put some positivity in the world and say, all is not lost. The world is not coming to an end. The world will continue, but the way we work has fundamentally shifted through this pandemic. So you guys know I like structure. So the way I'm structuring this podcast is first, I'm going to talk about what's happening in the corporate world for professionals who are employed to a steady job. Second, I want to talk about what I'm seeing in the freelance economy and the gig economy, what freelancers will expect through the pandemic and after. And then moving on to entrepreneurs, how will entrepreneurs be affected through the pandemic and after? And then fourth, I want to talk about how it's affected me personally. I just became an entrepreneur. I just left the corporate world 3 months ago, and then the world has completely changed all around me. So how am I thinking about it? What has happened to me? What's going on with me? And coming out of that story about my journey through this crisis, I want to share with you some tools that I'm using to manage myself, my emotions, and to really come to this moment in the world and in our lives with positivity, with being centered and balanced and ready and resilient and looking forward to what comes next. And then finally, I'm just going to end with a quick summary. What are my thoughts? How can we prepare? And what are the opportunities that you can jump on coming out of this moment in history? So let's get started. So first up, how will corporations change coming out of this pandemic? As we've seen, this is the largest work from home experience in history. Everyone around the world is working from home, remote working, digital meetings, online systems, cloud-based computing, all of that. The world was already shifting in this direction before the pandemic, but now we are in hyper acceleration. Countries and companies that thought they could exist without digitally transforming their businesses now realize that that world no longer exists. This will be, in my estimation, a permanent change. We will never go back to business as usual. In fact, team members, employees that are experiencing remote working, the flexibility over their schedule, the freedom that it brings will require of the companies that they work for that remote working become the norm. We cannot go back from this. Of course, we'll always want to go into a space and meet our colleagues and socialize for a bit and have that flexibility of opting for going into the office or working from home. But this moment is making this shift hyper accelerated and permanent. Outside of that, corporations are also going to have to change the work culture to fit this new remote lifestyle. So companies who are already fully remote, like WordPress Automatic, the company that owns WordPress, will lead the way in how to build camaraderie and teamwork in this age of fully remote teams. So what does this mean for service-based businesses like restaurants and gyms that require people to come in order for their business model to work? These business models will have to find a way to incorporate online streams of income, in my estimation. Gyms will have to create YouTube channels with workout videos that they can monetize, as well as having the option to come in person. Restaurants, that's a much harder model for me to think about how to transform it post the pandemic world. It will still be a very heavy in-person model, but ordering online has to become the norm for every single restaurant in the world. Delivery, should the restaurant start a cooking show on YouTube? I'm not sure, but we all have to rethink the models now in this moment where all of the world has hyper accelerated the move to digital business. So the result of all of this will be that corporates will start looking more like the freelance economy. Working with a corporation is going to look like working from home for yourself, except now you're going to have healthcare, a pension plan, and a salary, a consistent, steady income to boot while you're working from home and scheduling your time the way that you want to. So the two industries, the corporate world and the freelance economy, I think will start to converge. So what does this mean for freelancers? Well, I think freelancers coming out of this situation are going to become more risk averse. I think freelancers are going to demand more healthcare, pension plans, etc. And the massive platforms that agglomerate freelancers like Upwork, like Fiverr, will have to put in place for their freelancers healthcare, pension plans, create options for them to de-risk being out on their own. What freelancers are experiencing right now is not having the healthcare benefits, not having the steady salary. It's a time of intense anxiety, and I'm seeing it on Twitter. I see freelancers putting out Venmo and Cash App requests to help support them during this time where their income has suddenly and inexplicably and unexpectedly disappeared. So I think the freelance economy will take a hit coming out of this pandemic as freelancers look to now moving into a corporate shelter, especially now that the corporate world and the way it works has changed significantly. However, there will always be enterprising entrepreneurial individuals, solopreneurs, freelancers who like to report just to themselves and not to a corporation, who like to manage their own projects and select what kind of work they do. But even for those people, healthcare benefits and putting in place a contingency plan for emergencies will become even more important than ever before. So what can freelancers do in this moment of crisis? I see a lot of creativity happening on social media. I mentioned the Cash App seeking donations to help them through this time. But I also think creative solutions can be found because there are industries that are booming right now in the crisis. healthcare, etc. So if you're a graphic designer, can you be more proactive about reaching out to specifically healthcare organizations to offer your services? Can you consult with an organization that is seeing huge demand? I'm sure the IT departments of every corporate needs more consultants right now. You have to use your creativity to figure out where is the opportunity right now? Where can you deliver your services so that your income doesn't go to zero? I also expect that for a lot of people, debt loads will increase during this time. If you don't have enough savings, if you don't have an emergency stash or an emergency plan, you will move to debt. And I don't see how that's going to be avoidable for a lot of people. So if you're in this situation, the best advice I can give you is just to manage your costs as much as possible, cut where you can, and ensure that even if you're leaning towards debt, minimize it as much as you can so that coming out of this situation, you don't find yourself in a really bad bankruptcy situation. I also want to add here that a lot of my thoughts and my advice right now apply to the highly skilled workforce. So wage laborers, the people who are very vulnerable right now, whose income is so fragile to begin with. In this moment, governments will really have to step in and provide a social safety net for people who cannot cope with this historic moment. And I really would like to call on governments around the world to create some kind of grant program, stipend program for people who cannot manage during this moment in time. So this question of a social safety net brings me to entrepreneurs. And I'm differentiating between freelancers and entrepreneurs in that entrepreneurs have created an entity and a structure and a team and products and are not taking project-based work like freelancers would. So for entrepreneurs, a lot of the studies that came out years ago show that that decision that people make to move out of corporate and become an entrepreneur requires a safety net, requires a social safety net. The probability of someone making the decision to become an entrepreneur is much higher, where they feel that if they fail, they can fall back on something. If those risks are not mitigated, the likelihood of someone becoming an entrepreneur is very, very slim. And so entrepreneurs who have built a social safety net for themselves, whether it's through savings, you have a healthcare plan for yourself and your team members, you've thought about pensions, etc., are in a much less risky position right now than entrepreneurs who have not structured a social safety net for themselves. And so I think this moment will also shift what entrepreneurship means and require that these structures are in place when you are forming a business. So I do think that the glamour associated with entrepreneurship right now is going to fade a little bit, and a lot more people are going to start their passion projects as side hustles than ever before. We're going to see, for the next few years at least, a pullback of people making that jump into entrepreneurship permanently and more side hustlers, especially now that work from home is making working for an entity much more palatable than it was before. So those are kind of the downside risks on entrepreneurship, or what I see as potential negatives coming out. If you're an entrepreneur, you're going to have to spend more money up front for healthcare for yourself and your start and pension plans and putting that safety net in place, etc. However, I think there is massive opportunity as well right now. I think back to 2009 in the middle of the recession. I was in business school and I remember the stock price of Apple was so low, and I wish I had enough cash on hand at the time to buy Apple stock, because if I did, I would have made 100 times my money over the next 10 years to today. So right now, every recession presents a massive opportunity for very enterprising people who can absorb the risk to ride out the next 6 months of a deep economic trough, because coming out of that, we're going to go on an upswing in my estimation. So if you can look at where the areas of opportunity are, that will be very good for you as an entrepreneur. For me, I think there is massive opportunity right now with remote working, online courses, online coaching, the exact business that I'm in. So even though I felt very anxious at the beginning of this crisis, I'm actually feeling hopeful, excited, optimistic about the opportunities that will come out of it for my business. So now let me get to my fourth section in this podcast, which is what has been my personal experience as a new entrepreneur in 2020, going through the coronavirus pandemic. Well, as I mentioned, I started feeling quite anxious. I was worried that incomes were going to go to zero. The stock market rout that we saw last week, where all the major indices around the world fell by more than 10-20%, putting us in this rapid recessionary environment. Of course, that's going to have an impact on a new entrepreneur like myself. So I worried that my investors would back out. I worried that my clients would disappear. And I worried that, okay, I'm going to have to execute my worst case scenario of trying to become a consultant and going to my network and seeing what's available for me now that the whole world has turned upside down. So these were my thoughts at the beginning of my journey. And I had to pull on my tools to really center myself, come back into balance, and really be open to this experience and what it will require me to become coming out of this experience. And what happened as I shifted from this space of anxiety and concern into positivity and optimism and hopefulness and openness is good things started happening. My investors are with me still. They said, Lissandra, this is a massive opportunity for your business. We're not going to disappear. We are there with you. We will continue to back you, which has been incredible and unexpected. And I thank them so much for believing in me and believing in what Soul Career can do in the world in this moment right now. What also is happening that has shocked me and blown my mind is that I am getting more client consultation requests than I ever had before. I'm seeing people from Denmark and the UK and France, people who have been in lockdown, they've been at home for a week, they're reaching out and saying, I'm bored, I need to level up, I need to increase my skills so that coming out of this, I am in a really great position to capitalize on whatever career opportunities exist coming out of this. I want to work with you now. And wow! Wow, thank you. And I love having conversations with potential clients. I do a free initial consultation where we create a plan for you in your career, and you will get that plan regardless of whether you continue to work with us or not. And I love those conversations, and it has opened my eyes to the potential and the possibilities for an online business in this environment. It is massive, guys, massive. So pivot your business to online ASAP. Use this opportunity to do so. So what else is happening is that I am having to structure my day to remain productive during this time. So I do my morning routine. I wake up, I do yoga, I do a quick meditation, I have my tea and my coffee, and then I break my day into 2-hour chunks, and I go hard within each 2-hour chunks on a different part of the business or coaching clients, etc. And keeping that structure helps me to feel that I have stability and that I'm being productive and doing and making the most of this opportunity and this moment in time. And I'll talk a little bit more about these centering and balancing activities that I do in the next section. And then finally, the thing I want to say about this moment is it could be a really bad moment for me if I hadn't put in a safety net for myself before I left the Branson Center. So I have some savings, not a whole lot, but some. I had cultivated my network of support so that I know I have people I can call on to say, hey, I need some consulting jobs during this period. And they would say, absolutely, Lysandra, we would love to have your brain on this project. And I also had a group of investors, and I was very cautious about who I pitched to, because I went for people that I knew would be on my team and who would back me because they believed in what I could do and they were excited about whatever I was going to do next. And those guys have really, really stepped up in a major way right now. And finally, I have a co-founder, my brother, Warren, and he has helped me feel completely not alone in this time. He is my cheerleader. He's pushing the business forward with me. This is an amazing moment. We can do it. And I just really would encourage entrepreneurs who think they have to go it alone, that for me, having a team and a support system around me has been crucial to continue my journey as an entrepreneur in this moment. And I highly recommend to most entrepreneurs to create either a board of advisors, at least have a co-founder, have some investors, have people with you in the business so that it is a team effort and you're not going it alone, especially when we hit the crisis moments like the moment that we're in right now. So what could have been the biggest anxiety inducing moment in my life has actually been an incredible experience of people coming together to support me and to support this business, and seeing that there is massive opportunity in this crisis. And I'm now excited about what my business will look like coming out of it. So, and one of those scenarios could be that my business fails coming out of this. And that's okay too, because what we're experiencing in this moment is life. It is life unfolding. Life is chaotic, and you take a risk and you go for it, and you may succeed or you may land on your butt and be bruised and shaken, but you are resilient. I'm resilient. Whatever happens, we will recover. We will move on. We will move forward. I trust myself. I trust the universe. I have faith that we will all make it through to the other side of this moment. Okay, so this brings me to how to manage your emotions as we go through this time. I would start by saying limit your consumption of the news to maybe 1 hour in the morning per day, because you can really quickly go on a negative spiral if you're constantly watching the news during this time. So that is my number one piece of advice. Limit the inflow of negative information that's causing you panic into your life. But of course, stay informed and stay on top of what you need to do to protect yourself and your loved ones. The second thing I would say is make sure you are doing some kind of workout or exercise during this period to get out of your mind and take all that energy that's in your mind and move it through other energy centers in your body. Right? So I do yoga from YouTube every morning. I also use the Nike training app, which I love religiously, to work out from home. So I recommend doing that too. Just because you're stuck inside and can't go to the gym doesn't mean you can't work out. So keep moving and stop being stuck, have all that energy stuck in your mind this entire period. That's not healthy. That's not good for you. The other thing that's been helping me is guided meditations. So I'm a huge fan of Kelly Howell, who's called the Brain Whisperer. And she has guided meditations that are backed by binaural beats. Those beats lull your mind into a meditative state. And then she gives you messages of hope and encouragement and positivity. And I just love listening to her stuff. And the thing that I recommend to my clients in the Soul Career program is her oneness meditation. That everything is working out exactly as it should. All you have to do is rest and listen for guidance. And it really helps to center me during moments of anxiety or panic or fear. And then finally, I would say mindfulness meditation, which is different from guided meditations. So way back in 2009, during the Great Recession, when I was working in New York in between my 2 years at business school, I found myself in a space where I thought my thoughts were just controlling me. I was not controlling my thoughts. My thoughts ran my entire experience. And I wanted to get out of that space. And I happened into this bookstore and came across these books on Buddhism and using Buddhist principles to manage the thoughts in your mind. And particularly, I came across Jack Kornfield, who wrote The Wise Heart, and he has this small book called Meditation for Beginners, which I use to create my own mindfulness practice. Mindfulness is silent meditation, where you go inwards and release and detach from the things happening around you and center yourself on your breath and going inwards into silence, which is a hard meditation to do. But Jack Kornfield helped me a lot, and the whole Buddhist philosophy around mind management helped me a lot too. So I try to do some mindfulness practices during this period. If I see myself spiraling into negativity, I bring myself back to center. This is the way that the breath creates this discipline in you. During a mindfulness meditation, your thoughts will wander off. You bring it back to the breath. I go into anxiety, I bring it back to center. I go into worry, I come back to myself. So mindfulness helps me a lot during this time. And if you're interested in learning more about Jack Kornfield, this morning I listened to Tim Ferriss's most recent podcast episode, and he actually has Jack Kornfield interviewing him on Tim Ferriss's podcast right now. I think it's a 2-hour-long interview, and Jack talks you through some of these practices, and it's just a very beautiful interview with one of the great Buddhist minds in the world that's still alive right now. So before I go, let me summarize some of the things that I think will happen coming out of this pandemic. I think we as individuals will become more risk averse coming out of this pandemic, and we will have greater demand for insurance than ever before. As we saw coming out of the recession, millennials became much more risk averse coming out of the recession. This is another moment like that. So make sure you have healthcare. Make sure you have a pension set up or some plan for it. Just try to put in the safety net to mitigate and manage risk. We're seeing right now how important that is. Second, I think the work world has changed forever. Remote working, online meetings, online learning is now going to be the new norm permanently coming out of this, which is a moment of great opportunity for digital businesses. But the flip side of that is that as corporate jobs become more attractive, the gig economy and becoming an entrepreneur will become less glamorous for a lot of people. So preparing yourself to find a professional career in a corporate company, if you're ready for that, come talk to us at Soul Career. But if you are willing to take the risk and can manage yourself through the risk, there's a lot of opportunity that's going to come from this crisis as well if you decide to continue being an entrepreneur or a freelancer. And finally, there will be a boom in online learning opportunities. So I've jumped into this space. Maybe you should consider jumping into the space. If you're a yoga teacher, go online, have a yoga YouTube channel. If you're a restaurant, have a cooking channel online. Just find a way to jump into the online learning space. I think it is going to blow up coming out of this moment, this recession. So that's it, guys. Those are my thoughts. Reach out to me on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, or wherever, and let me know what you think about this episode and what you think is going to happen coming out of this crisis. And of course, if you are a professional, executive, entrepreneur, or freelancer, and you're ready to prepare for your next career transition, reach out to me on soulcareer.com, book your free consultation with me. I would love to have that conversation with you. Thank you, and until next time, remember, the world will go on. If you love this episode, remember to hit subscribe and leave us a review. And if you're a professional, executive, or entrepreneur that's interested in taking one of our coaching programs, head on over to soulcareer.com and sign up for a free consultation. We'd love to hear from you.